All right. So this afternoon, we'll finish up with just hopefully giving you some nuggets of information about service delivery plans, some of the pitfalls and gotchas surrounding service in general, and hopefully provide you with a nugget or two to leave here and take back and say, hey, we should be doing this or changing that. Just a little bit about me. I'm with Community Health Systems. We're one of the for-profits, and we own and operate 67 hospitals in 15 states and about 1,000 plus freestanding EDs, imaging centers, surgery centers. I also served on the ACI board and the ICC board for the certification of CRES, Certified Radiology Equipment Specialist, CVETS, CHPM, all those great certifications now run by Amy. So my goal today is, like I said, hopefully you take home a nugget or two of information and you say, yeah, you know what, I should probably be doing something like that. And of course, our patients are depending on us to be excellent every day, right? Because they're coming through that front door. And, I always equate it back to my mom as she was going through some cancer stuff. And, she would call me the night before and she's telling me where the bank books are located. Mom, I know you told me the last time you were going for, and to me, it's just a CT scan or a PET scan or something like that. To them, they could die. They're going to die today, and I think about that all the time, and they really depend on us to make sure we're doing our very best so that the equipment is top notch. They're ready to go. We're not going to delay their case or cancel their case. They have a neighbor driving them in, or their son that took off from work driving them in. So, it was in the leadership summit that we had on Sunday morning. One of the imaging directors said, how much impact that clinical engineering has on patient care. We always think we're just equipment care, but to a certain extent, what we do seriously impacts patients and patient outcomes. So where do you start? Start with an accurate inventory. And I mean an accurate inventory. So, it's great to have make, model, serial number, but the next step is get the IT information down. Your MAC address, your IP address, operating system on that device, rev levels of software on that device. I love that to be extremely transparent. One of the products that I have was a CM, used to be called CMMS, now it's called an Enterprise Asset Management piece of software. Everybody all 89,000 employees in the organization had access to my database. It was a read-only access, but they had access to it. So it was total transparency. And the reason for that was we didn't use any planned maintenance stickers on devices. So when a Joint Commission surveyor walked around, we depended on the nursing staff, the rad tech, the lab tech, to be able to use their barcode scanner and go over to the device and scan the device. And what typically would pull up was the last PM done, next one due, some information about the device. And it worked flawlessly. They loved it. When you launch a new program that I had previously, you're always a little bit nervous, right? Hopefully you trained everybody paid attention, and a surveyor went out to one of my clinics, and one of the administrators, our C-suite folks, was escorting the surveyor, and they walked up to, it was a nurse in the department, and said, hey, when was the last PM done on this device? Thank goodness. Took the barcode scanner, scanned the barcode on the device, and had all the answers for the surveyor. The surveyor thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. So accurate inventories are so important. It's, as a corporate director, my hospital, I sit 2,000 to 3,000 miles away from my hospital, And that's the only eye into what they're doing and what's going on with devices. So an accurate inventory, put your warranty information in there. And then once you get that completed, the next step in the process that I like to go toward is a service delivery plan. So we're at an imaging conference, so I'm going to be targeting imaging devices in my discussion. And obviously it could pertain to biomedical devices as well if you're in a cath lab and your EP system, or this is an important step, this next step. What's a service delivery plan? So service delivery plan, you want to engage as many folks as possible that would have, or stakeholders, if you will, in the development of the service delivery plan. What do I mean by that? So the service delivery plan, if you have a CT or an MR or a cath lab, some of the heavy iron gear that we talk about, you want to make sure everybody's cognizant of how to work the service delivery plan. If you're doing it in-house, they need to understand how to get a hold of the in-house folks at 2 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So the service delivery plan is going to contain information like that, and we're all going to agree to it. And I also put in there IT folks. You want to include your IT team in that, because there's cybersecurity issues. So I think I mentioned in there, or we'll get to, we'll talk about a little bit about patching. So you want to make sure that you include all the stakeholders that would be involved in developing that service delivery plan. And then you want to document the service delivery plan. You want to make sure that the techs in the control room, the techs down in the cath lab, the techs down in the central imaging area, you want to make sure they all understand the plan. Who are they going to call when the lights go out? So there's no doubt. In your EAM, your enterprise asset management, you want to make sure that you have all of the entitlements associated. If you're using a third party or an OEM, you want to make sure you document all the entitlements. Again, total visibility, so that when your technologist, let's say you're doing an in-house program, your technology, or even just the on-call person that has to make the call to the OEM or third party, they can look up online and look and see what the entitlements are. Do I have coverage 24 hours, or is it 8 to 9 coverage? Do I want to call that person in for a C-arm that's in the OR, even though it was a trauma case at 2 o'clock in the morning, but guess what? They have 6 C-arms sitting in the back hallway. So you don't need to call in service at 2 o'clock in the morning. You're waiting for the next time period to make that call. But to have that kind of transparency and all those service delivery plans in your enterprise asset management product is a big deal. It's fantastic. I mentioned the OR. I talked about the inventory earlier. One of the things that I captured and implemented in talking with the surgery folks, you have a circulator nurse in the room. One of their responsibilities is to document every device that's being utilized in that surgery. And they put it into the EMR for that patient. So in the olden days, before I got there, they would fat finger that in to the EMR. And typically it was electrosurgical generator, C-arm. The problem with that strategy is what happens 6 months, a year, or a year and a half from then, there's a lawsuit on that case. And it's, let's say the C-arm was involved. That was implicated in the lawsuit. Well, how do you know which C-arm? If you're just documenting that you used a C-arm, now you have no idea what C-arm. So what I did was, in cooperation, we had Cerner, now Oracle, and we integrated that to our enterprise asset management product. So essentially, the circulator nurse just took the barcode scanner on the WOW, went over to the C-arm, scanned the barcode, and it made a call to the CMMS, pulled it out, deposited it into make, model, serial number, deposited it into the electronic medical record for that patient. Did that to all the devices. You talk about one of the greatest satisfiers for surgery. It's unbelievable. The other option some folks do is they have drop-down menus. So they'll put device types in a drop-down menu in the EMR, and then the circulator nurse will, okay, click on the arrow, drop-down menu. Hey, I'm using that, I'm using that, I'm using that. But again, the same problem. We have no idea which ESU burned the patient. And typically, it's the pad that they applied improperly. But so, if you ever want to have a great satisfier for those technical clinical engineering folks in the room, suggest that to your team if you're not already doing that. Man, the surgery team will love you, love you. So inventories are important. Let's see, what else? So now we want to make a decision on the service delivery plan. So now we have an idea. We met with the staff. We know that, hey, on the CTs, we want 8 to 9 coverage. We want PMs done after the 9 o'clock coverage, right? And if you're going to negotiate, if you're going to use an OEM, you're going to negotiate that into the service agreement, right? That the PMs are done with it, at the same cost or whatever the cost might be that you're negotiating into that service agreement. It's done at 9 o'clock and it's over at 1 o'clock, so that the trauma team knows that after 1 we can use that CT for trauma cases again. So that's the type of thing you want to do with the service delivery plan. If you want to do, so there's 3 opportunities with the service delivery plan. You can either do full outsource, do full in-house, or you do a combination of outsource and in-house planning. And when I talk about outsource, that could be either the OEM or a third party. You've already decided, in making the service delivery plan 24/7, 8 to 5 coverage. Create the expectation so everybody knows what the plan is. Decide on your parts coverage. Are you going to cover the glassware? Or are you going to go at risk? How many times do you put an X-ray tube in? Is it once every 3 years? Well, if you're being charged $20,000 a year and it's a rad room for an X-ray tube, you're paying a lot of money for that X-ray tube over 3 years. So, and the technical folks in the room, that's our job to educate the clinical folks. Hey, this is what happens. This is the history that we have on the previous system or on other systems with the same model that we're buying, right? That's a great thing about having a very robust enterprise asset management system, is to utilize that data and make very educated decision, data-driven decision, not emotional decisions, right? Because you're going to get a lot of that from, especially the clinical folks, right? They want 24/7 coverage. They want it all. And sometimes, that doesn't make any sense because you're spending an awful lot of money without real good results. One thing I want to put in there, and we heard this earlier in one of the earlier sessions this morning at 9 o'clock, you're seeing a lot of this creep in, obsolescence protection. You're seeing this little line item creep into these service agreements where the vendors are building in, and I recently had one with a linear accelerator agreement, and I noticed the high price tag on a similar system that I had gotten quotes for, and it was about $100,000 delta from what I typically see. And sure enough, in there was an obsolescence. So, I went back to the clinical team, right? Because I want to educate them. I want them to understand what we are paying for, what we CHS are paying for. And I said, hey, understand that you have in here built-in obsolescence protection. Do we really want to do that? And then the next question I did was I went back to Varian and said, give me the schedule. What was the last 3 or 4 years of history of upgrades that was part of an obsolescence protection program? And, their initial, well, it's like 18, 24 months, we will release something. I said, well, did it include hardware? Well, sometimes it does. And, so what I'm trying to gauge is what's the value proposition, right? If it's strictly a software upgrade, maybe it provides better features or more features requiring no hardware, maybe we'll buy that. Because, at $100,000 delta over a 3-year contract or a 5-year contract, 300,000, $500,000, and maybe that software is only $89,000 to buy, and it's a one-time buy. So a lot of education on the clinical staff to understand so that we're all understanding the risk and whether we want to do it or not. The last item, it's a big deal these days. I don't know, are other folks seeing this as well with their system, software patching? Who does software patching for the technical folks? I see. Caitlin, are you technical or clinical? Engineer. Okay, cool. So I think we're all.
What's the issue you're at? I'm sorry.
So software patching.
What about it?
So who's doing it?
Siemens
Yeah.
drops, Siemens
Excellent
drops
question.
automatically.
What was that?
Siemens drops an auto for RF systems. Will show up in the morning, it'll say, click here for 3-hour update. It'll take the machine down.
I'm like, that sounds terribly not
If
helpful.
you get 4 strikes, and it forces it. So we get strike 1, we get the call from the tech, says, hey, should I click yes or no? No, don't click this, schedule this.
Right.
Record it, you get out.
And that's why I have that line item in there.
Yeah, but it's an auto push. Siemens,
Wow. If you're what, full service or
full service.
yeah, if you're full service and you have VPN, they have a VPN tunnel to your device. So this is a big deal. This is again part of the service delivery plan. You got to talk about that. You just brought up a great point, so that the department head director understands. Hey, if your tech clicks that, you're down for 3 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours, and you're pushing patients back. Now you're causing overtime for your staff. These days everybody's very cognizant about overtime and very sensitive about overtime. So this is becoming a big deal. How does Boston Imaging do it?
So we have a couple of different, I was gonna ask a follow-up question. So we are overcome some software. We'll do pushes, but we will not push automatically. We want to coordinate with the HDM team, coordinate.
Yep.
And the other part of doing an automatic push on any product, from our perspective, is we push to your device, and even if it comes right back up, but what if we change the user interface, the application? Listen, we want to be as advanced as we can at Samsung, but we also want to be cognizant of what's happening when you talk about you're bringing your mother in for a CAT scan. And you hit accept on that push. Now that mother's going home, that father's going home. So we're really trying to be, that's why we're here, right? We want to be cognizant of what's happening.
Mike, you make a great point about the GUI. Maybe you change configuration of the GUI or something like that, because my mind's working, well, it's a Windows system and we're just pushing a Windows cyber update or something like that. But to your point, that's a great point.
Now you get into an issue where you have to do a repeat exam. So you have to do a repeat exam to OEM. We have to report that. Required to report to the FDA if there's any repeat exams.
Because it's radiation.
Yeah. So, listen, we could push all day long, but you'll all hate us if we start pushing all day long.
So I think this is a great discussion, and I hope that's one of the nuggets you take home with you. When you're negotiating a service agreement, make sure you have that nailed down. So, as I said, I'm thinking more of like a Windows update or a Linux update or something like that. Who's doing it? Because my IT department, I don't know how your IT department is, they don't want to touch the medical device, right? They come back to me and they're like, well, the OEM. What do you mean the OEM? I mean, yeah.
So what's the, there's probably not a general consensus, but from people in the road perspective, what's the ideal way to do it? What works best for you?
I don't think the other push is bad, seeing as long as everybody is fully aware of what the complications may or may not be. It's a four strike policy. If you don't do it, it's gonna force it, which is good. But it also gives the end user the option of yes or no, continue.
Does it give the end user the option to, you know, you can do it on your phone, like, do you want to do it now, or do you want to do it at midnight, start it at midnight? Like,
Well, it doesn't sound like it.
I don't think that-
It's yes, no, or-
Yeah, it's a yes or no. It's not, they're not a suspend, reschedule. Now, we've asked Siemens about that on back end on the server side. If we can go in and tell, you know, get a menu that's gonna say, okay, updates.
Here's your update.
Yeah, updates are to be performed.
Kind of like the Apple phone, right? The Apple phone downloads the update, prepares the update, and where you can then come in after they're done using the CT and say, hey, I'm going to have it now for 4 hours. You schedule the time, and now you do the update, right? So to my point about who does it, and my IT team, like I said, they don't want anything to do with the medical devices. So I'm trying to put my arms around it that we'll do the patching. Now, how do we consume the patching, right? Is it a push to the device and it just sits there? I think that's a great idea that you brought up, where it just sits on the device and then you're alerted that, hey, a push was made, and now we schedule with the staff, we schedule with the users of the device, and then we come in whenever we have that machine. They give us that machine, and we click on that to start the update. I think that's a great solution, but that's why I put that in there, is who's doing the patching, and make sure you negotiate that. If you are outsourcing that to a third party or an OEM, make sure you negotiate that in the contract, that if you want them to do it, make sure they're aware that they have to do it. The other thing I think, and I'd like to hear the back of the room, and it's great that we have a vendor in the room today, because I would like to know the validation process. So that always bothers me, right? So we get a CVE, right? Hey, there's a vulnerability in your, let's just say it's a Windows operated device. There's a CVE for Windows, and the vulnerability. So now, Windows comes out with a patch. How long does it take the vendor to validate the patch? I maintain that you should probably have something in the contract, if it's with the OEM, or I would do it at the time of purchase, is create a timeline, because man, you don't want to be hanging out there with a vulnerability. Your security team is going to have a real problem with vulnerabilities hanging out there on the network. Now, some of us have some pretty cool tools. From a biomed perspective, we purchase IoT, IOMT software, and we can see those vulnerabilities. We get those vulnerabilities very quickly from our IoT, IOMT solution provider. We can monitor how that device is talking on the network. If it's a Samsung device, do you ever see it talking to Japan? Because that would be or Korea. I'm sorry, Korea. That would be an appropriate communication. You probably have American servers, is that right? Yeah, so it doesn't have to go back to Korea. You probably would send stuff back to Korea from Massachusetts.
And then we test it in the United States
Mhm.
before we.
Wow.
And Chris, I'm hearing about organizations that have pretty sophisticated IT and cyber teams. Are they, Samsung sends it to me, I'm gonna do my own validation before you get.
In a test environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I was blessed at UHS to have a very strong programming team and solutions team, and they did a lot of that stuff. And sometimes, some of the devices were older, and the patches weren't being validated by the manufacturer. So you can validate your own patches. If you have a Windows operating system or a Linux operating system, and you get a patch for some of those older devices, or you don't have it under contract or anything like that, and you and your team can do the validation. Obviously, a little bit of a risk, but it all comes down to budgets and all that kind of stuff. All right.
Just money.
It's just money. Time and money fixes everything. If you decide on outside service providers, OEM third party, who manages the service providers? Big deal for me. Who manages the service providers? What do I mean by that? So again, I'm kind of crazy about security. I have a great example for you. I told you I have an IoT, IOMT solution. We saw some crazy activity going on in one of my hospitals in Amarillo, Texas. And we, again, we had that IoT, IOMT solution integrated with our CMMS. It was a CareScape gateway, a GE CareScape gateway. Somebody went down to the server room where that was located, walked in, and the GE guy had put a USB stick into the CareScape gateway. So, but within minutes, we were able to determine what was going on, send somebody down. The service engineer bypassed the biomed department, was working on the CareScape gateway. Shocking. And so it's so important that we know who's coming into our facilities. And you should put that in your CMMS or EAM and have those folks validated. What happens when they terminate that person? Did they ever tell you that they're terminating that person? They should. You should have that in the contract. That they, upon termination, they're required to notify the biomedical team. You have a group mailbox or something like that. Hey, Joe Schmo was terminated from GE today, and we've stopped his remote access. But today, in my health system, we don't allow generic access to systems anymore. Like, you would give Siemens a generic access to your VPN tunnel, and you would give, GE and all these vendors. Today, we make the vendor tell us what people in the organization need access. And I know it's a little bit of a management nightmare because sometimes all that change, but we track that so that we can cut off any kind of access for that individual. And there's PHI on the device, right? And a lot of these devices, there's PHI on it. They have access to PHI. You say, well, Chris, nobody's going to do it. It's 2025. Yeah. But some of the institutions don't have big departments like Wellstar or CHS or so, community hospitals or something like that. So now the vendor, be it third party or OEM, is going directly to the department. And that's why I made sure, because I didn't know who was going to be my audience this afternoon. You got to somehow figure out how to document. If you do have a third party biomed doing your biomed, get them engaged, get them involved, even though they're a third party, so that they can put these people into the system so it's easy and accessible. Remember, I'm again, transparency. I'm a big guy. I don't care people looking at my data or anything like that. But it's read only, but they can look at data. My C-suite, if they want someone, now of course they're not going to do that, but they'll have somebody on their team look at my data. My finance team managed all of the assets in that system. They didn't have a separate asset system for depreciation or anything like that. It was our system that they used, because it was all there. And it's demanding your team. You've got to have a great team to make sure they're 99.9% accurate on your inventory. Yeah. It's,
No one says.
you know, if you're terminating somebody, your IT department is notified right away, right through your systems, your HR systems. Big deal. I'm sure the manufacturer, as soon as they terminate somebody, you know, they cut off access in their stuff, but really, just in case that service engineer had some kind of a tool, you know, because there's some great savvy service engineers out there, and they know how to clone stuff and copy stuff, and you know, they're given tools by their employer, and they might have that at home on a computer, and hey, let me just go in, you know, go rogue on us, and let me get into, you know, Wellstar and look at their CT scanner. Yeah,
I
But-
couldn't get anything else, I lost everything.
but Justin, now you're an in-house guy. Now you have access. Well, you can go on Siemens, what do they call that, portal or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's what Mike, and two, if we're doing service on a Samsung GM85, you know, we can go to your, exactly, and pull stuff down from you, right? Yep. So I think that's what he's talking about, like, well, wait, if you're asking us to give you a heads up, we should give you, and that should be, and that should all be discussed as we go into the relationship, right? And you'll see at the end, it's all about relationships. Yep.
Another person in charge of something.
Negotiates, make sure your organization negotiates all of the terms and conditions before signing the service agreement. Get everything in writing. You know, I remember I had a TEE probe that went bad, and the department head over there, yeah, but you know, Joe said that we're going to have a new TE transducer, and was that in the purchase agreement? Well, no. Well, Joe told me though. Yeah, well, you know what? That means nothing. So, you know, she's like, well, go after, you know, you have to go after them. Go after them with what? There's no legal document. So everything in writing. And I don't know if I have it here. May I also ask, if you are doing service agreements, and I don't know, I'd like to hear from others and also I have another manufacturer here as well. At UHS, we wrote stuff on our own paper, right? So we would have a boilerplate service contract, send it to an OEM, and of course the red line stuff starts happening. We both had a lot of lawyers that went back and forth, but at least it's our paper. It's, you know, our lawyers put it all down in writing. They get to make changes, we get to make changes, agree to those changes. If we don't, we can suggest new changes, but that's a big deal today. A lot of health systems, I don't know if Wellstar does it, a lot of systems are using their own, what we call our own paper, not starting with the contract that I get from the OEM, which, let's face it, but we have where we want the state to be, you know, any kind of disagreements to be litigated. They're going to have their home state in there. You can go back and forth of who agrees on what, but typically manufacturers today or third parties today will agree to litigate in wherever you want them. So if you do intend to have some combination of OEM or third party and in-house, make sure all that's in the contract if you want some training and education out of it. You know, we have some great third party vendors in here. They love to train folks, manufacturers in here that love to train folks. But make sure, again, just like the department of my, or the leader of my cardiac ultrasound department said, well, Joe told me we're going to get a free TEE probe. Same thing, get it in writing. Don't, there's no, hey, you know, Bob's my buddy and he'll take care of me. Because you know what? Bob might get hit by a Mack truck on the way out of the hospital. So get everything in writing so it's sustainable. Uptime is a key to excellent patient experience. So make sure, you know, you decide within the agreement how you're going to calculate uptime. Okay, that's a great little smoke and mirrors type thing. But boil it down to very simple terms: as, hey, this is how many hours we're open, you know, and this is what we expect for uptime. You know, 98%, 95%, whatever you. and I think we're hearing this, I heard this several times today in the sessions, these providers are stretched thin, just like we're getting more and more stretched thin. So, you were saying you're managing how many, 60, yeah, 60 something systems? Yeah, I mean, you think he's gonna get to you in 4 hours? You're out of your mind. And then, did you do installs as well? Yeah,
That's 2 weeks from install.
that's what I mean. And, I had a relationship with an organization, and it really it was a partnership, right? And they stored some parts on site at our facility, kind of forward stocking. I remember calling one time, they were doing an install in a town about an hour away. We had an issue, and I had imaging engineers, and but we had a contract on this one CT, and they said, hey man, you got the part, yeah, take it, do it, put it in. We didn't want to call them and stop them from doing the install or wait for them to get done for the day and come down, and we were able to fix that machine and get them up and running. But that's the relationship. That's the value proposition that you provide to your clinicians as well, so that they understand that's the difference between going all in and just kind of washing your hands of any responsibility on a service agreement. You always have to have responsibility for a service agreement. But the training and education, negotiate that, make sure it's in the contract, what you're going to pay for it, if you're going to pay for it. So everything in writing. I talked about how it should be written on your paper. Here's a great, the second bullet, service keys. Big deal. Probably shouldn't address this in the service. You can try, but the time to negotiate that is at the time of purchase, right? Because you have what they want, which is the purchase order to buy the system in the first place. The service side of things, after the purchase and after the 1-year warranty, and you're coming up toward the end of the 1-year warranty, service keys are very, very difficult to get at that point. It's very difficult. You're going to pay for it. If you're going to get them, you're going to pay for it. So be very cognizant of that. I told a story earlier today about interventional room that I had. The doctor had to have it, and boy, we had a lot of downtime during that first year. It was a Siemens room, and we're getting closer to the end of the warranty period, and I didn't sign a POS, point of sale agreement. So we told, all right, I'm gonna let go of the vendor. We told Siemens, hey, look, man, we've had a tremendous amount of downtime, and they said, don't worry about it. I gave you the service agreement, just sign the service agreement, and you're covered. You don't have to worry about it. I said, yeah, but we've been down more than we've been up with this system. The doctor who had to have the system now is ticked off and PO'd about this system and its reliability. So this is, again, where you're in-house, even if you're not touching the system, even if you don't have the talent in-house, you should be involved with imaging equipment and document everything for your department and your device. So the imaging department. We did that. We had a very detailed documentation system, and even we had such a relationship with our imaging department. If they called for applications support, maybe they were having a software issue or something like that, they told us. We documented it. So all that was documented in our system. But this thing came to blows. Siemens flew out a bunch of people to the hospital. I flew out from the corporate headquarters. The C-suite was in the meeting, and we're all in this discussion. And Siemens says, well, look, it's been a pretty reliable system. They had like 7 or 8 calls documented in the system. My clinical engineering director pulls out a spreadsheet list of almost 40 calls documented of downtime, genuine downtime. They crushed. They said, okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to extend the warranty. They flew a guy out from Germany. Guess what? We fixed it. And it worked ever since then. Of course, they wanted me to sign the service agreement, and I didn't. So, but we got an additional 6 or 8 months of warranty, and it was very reliable, very stable. But it was just an installation, probably a thing that happened very early on. So help your staff out, your clinical staff out, be their eyes and ears, document everything, be involved from the beginning. But those service keys, make sure you're on the front end of the purchasing of all this gear. Consider negotiating consignment parts. You know, that's a big deal. Less downtime, the better you can be to your patients, right? Because it's all about the patient coming through the front door. It's not about us. We don't have a job just because they're nice to us and want to give us a job. We got to make sure that the patient's taken care of. Negotiate any penalties with downed equipment, because that's always a, you know, oh, we'll extend your service agreement or your warranty period for 3 days. Well, no, no, I want another 3 months, or I want another 6 months of warranty until the device is stable. But negotiate it, put it in writing. You know, some things in service contract, consider negotiating profit sharing. You know, that's kind of a unique relationship with your vendor. So, you know, if you're paying $100,000 on the service contract, and the reason why, so now we both have skin in the game, right? Because we want to make sure that there's incentive for us to help them. We don't want to call them constantly. We just talked about how stretched these field service engineers are. So if we have a little bit of training under our belt and we can solve 85%, because probably about 85, 90% of the problems aren't major downtime situations. They're kind of easy downtime situations. But if we can do that ourselves and work together in that relationship with the vendor, then again, we're helping the patient. But have that all negotiated. Maybe, you know, if you're spending $100 grand on the contract, and, you know, maybe at the end of the day, you say, hey, you know, for 10 grand, you know, if we don't have you guys out except for PMs and maybe 2 corrective maintenance calls, you know, we share in that $10,000 of profit, you know, something like that. But it's great to each have skin in the game, right? You're both got to do something to get to the cherry. And then again, I didn't know if I was going to have a bunch of clinical folks. Obviously, I'm an in-house service guy. I prefer in-house service or third-party service over the OEM, because reason why, I think they have a little bit more ownership. I think that's a good word. I think they have a little bit more ownership to it. They're answering to a master that's driving profits. Most, not all. You know, I had a great president of Premier CTS, Bob Doster, and he was spot on. And he would say, you know, because we were always keeping our finger on the profit, on the pulse of what we were doing, and he would just say, guys, focus on the customer. Focus on the customer. And all that other stuff will just fall in line. And you know, he was right every time. If I had a bad director in one of our facilities, and there are, right? Not in the right place, not in the right time. And, you know, there's conflict between the customer and the director, and our costs are so high. You know, the director's not managing our costs. The customer's complaining. It's amazing. You swap out the director and everything turns around. The customer satisfaction turns around, our profitability turns around, because even though we were Premier, you know, we still wanted to make a profit so that we could give raises to the next, you know, for the next year, and invest in our business and all that kind of stuff. So that was a big deal. So, you know, consider the benefits, though, of the in-house program. The in-house program, there's no wait time for your client, right? Like I said, my motto is never to allow a piece of medical equipment that we're responsible for to delay or cancel a patient diagnostic or therapeutic case. That was our mantra. That is our mantra. That's what I want my team to understand. If we're responsible for it, don't cause, because we fail to do maintenance, don't get lazy. You saw in that first or second slide, the patients are depending on us to be excellent every day. You know, I told the story of, you know, I was in a new hospital and I wanted to grow into an imaging program, and they had ultrasound machines outsourced. I think ultrasound machines are basic biomed work. They are. To me, they're basic biomed work. And we had an OEM that came into this. Again, it's a new facility for me. And my team, okay, here's a desk over here. You can do the PM over here. And so I came walking in from a meeting and I saw the guy, introduced myself to the person. And again, OEM service engineer. And I said, because I want to grow my in-house biomed and I wanted to see what kind of Phantom he was using for quality control. And there was no Phantom on the desk. I said, oh, Phantom. He says, yeah, I have one. I said, oh, can I see it? Like what brand is it? Is it Sun Nuclear or who? Oh, it's in the car. Well, how are you doing the PM if you're doing, you know, how you doing that? Like, what are you doing? So that kind of sent a red flag up to me. I went back to my office, pushed some paper around the desk, and I came back out and he was finishing up the PM. And as the guy's doing whatever he's doing on his computer, my service engineer, who really didn't watch him or do anything, or, you know, he gets the cart and he's ready to push the ultrasound machine upstairs, and I'm catching his eye, and I'm saying, hey. So he stopped, put the cart in the corner of the room, and I waited for the service engineer to leave. And I had, by this time, a couple of my staff, because it's getting later in the day, had several of my staff in the room. And I wheeled the cart in the middle of the room, and they're all watching me. And I get down on the floor. I pulled out the filter for the fan, for the power supply on the bottom. Absolutely filthy. Absolutely filthy. You know, I'm sure that power supply would have heated up over a little bit more time of sheet changes on the bed upstairs, and we would have lost the power supply. But they were all wide-eyed, like, oh my God, this guy's a madman. I can't believe, you know, we trusted this guy, because they did. They thought, hey, you know, Bob's great. He's a good dude. You know, I was at one of my hospitals in Tucson, Arizona. You know, we had we had a guy. Oh, we love Joe. Oh, Joe's the greatest. Oh, the Joe's. You know, Joe's not doing what he's being paid to do. We're paying good money for these agreements, and Joe's not doing what he's doing. So keep an eye on don't just wash your hands of, even though it's under a full service agreement, don't walk away. Monitor what they're doing. Check on what they're, making sure you're getting the value for what your employer is paying for. It's so important. Let's see. I hear the music playing downstairs, so I got 7 minutes left. So I talked about, to his point, you know, they might be carrying a portfolio of $10 to $20 million in service agreement. Trying to get to your system is going to be a trouble. Your in-house person is not making decisions on delaying your service team because you're small. Okay, so you know, sometimes you know, they have these big giant Wellstar systems out there. They got multi-million-dollar service contracts, and there you are, little community hospital, and you got a $55,000 service contract. Well, I'll get to you when I get to you. So, so I'm trying to sum up. There was a common denominator in this whole presentation. What's the common denominator? Communication, collaboration, people. People. It matters who is on our team. It matters who Samsung picks for their team. It matters who Acetera picks on their team. It matters who Althea has on their team. It matters who Siemens has on their team. People who care. people who are invested in the same goal that we're invested in, which is the patient. The patient has to have the best experience because we want them coming back. You know what? If they have a crappy experience because their MR is down and they had to cancel for the day, and their loved one took off from work, wasted a whole day of PTO, they go back home to the community. Maybe they're having a little barbecue out the back, and the neighbors come over, and yeah, I was over at Wellstar, man, it was awful. I took a whole day off, and all of that travels around. So it matters, because the impact to your employer could be very detrimental. That's what I'm saying. So it matters.
You don't want to be on the nightly news.
Yes.
UPMC York.
Yeah.
You don't wanna be on the news.
I used to say that to Mike Nelson at UHS. I said, man, I don't want any of my hospitals to be on the news because of a piece of equipment that we repaired. And or didn't
And
repair.
then ended up in
Great point.
suboptimal care for the patient.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of other reasons to get on higher.
What's that? Who you hire matters. Because I have peers that hire warm bodies. I'm not a warm body guy. I need productivity. I need things to get done. I need them to care. I need them to be on the team, right? We don't have to go out and have beers after or something like that, or see each other on the weekend. But man, we got to work as a team. Because you know what? If you're going upstairs and you're in front of the nurse, or you're in front of the rad tech or the lab tech, and they say, oh, Bob was up here, and you don't want to say, oh, he's a piece of crap. He's no good. Because you know what? In the end, it's the biomed guy. They say it's the biomed. They don't say it's Bob. In the end, it's our team that takes the hit. So if we all work together and we all support each other, Bob might be a little challenging. Thank you. And you know what? That's for your director. I terminated a guy one time, and two people came up to me right after and said, that should have happened 10 years ago. I was like, and I was a new director there, and I'm like, why did it wait for me to get there? Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to have that reputation, but it was obvious that this guy's name was Mike. He wasn't the right fit for the team. He just wasn't the right fit for the team. And like I said, people thought that was the greatest thing. So finally, that ain't right. And then you start, I tried to fire Mike before that last incident, but my VP of HR said to me, Chris, I looked at all his reviews, and now I'm at this place 6 months or something like that. I looked at all the reviews. He's got great reviews. So then I went back down to the office. I started looking at the reviews of all of my team members. They all looked the same. I mean, from one guy to the next guy to the next guy, it was damn near the same verbiage, everything. I was like, guys, I talked to my two managers that have been there for 27 and 30 years. I'm like, guys, you're doing a review. What are you doing? It's a review. You want to be constructive. You don't have to beat the living daylights out of the person, but be constructive. If he's great or she's great, tell him he or she's great. If they need a little improvement, help them. So